Hello and welcome to DIESOL episode number 7. We are your hosts. I am Brent Warner.
And I'm Michelle Reyes. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yes.
Today's topic is 20 things to try in 2020. It's the start of a new year and we are ready to start fresh. But first, Brent, what resolutions do you have for 2020?
Ooh, good question. I have not totally planned out. I'm not very good at planning them. Are you good at planning your resolutions?
New year, new me. Nope, never happens.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not a good. I don't.
It's kind of the joke, right? Like, of course, not kind of. It's just the common statement is like, oh yeah, resolutions don't last or whatever it is. But but I'm not usually good at like planning them. That's the problem. Is like I don't even get to the stage where I'm like, this is what I'm going to be doing next year. I mean, I like it in concept, but I never actually pull through on those. I just start doing something when I feel motivated to start doing it. So with that in mind, we do have a show-related resolution, which is that we are adding a second show to our monthly schedule.
Right, a second show.
So we had kind of sorted this out and talked about it, and the plan is to do one show that's kind of the format that we're doing now, which is a little bit of research and then kind of how to use that research to integrate technology into the classroom. And then the other show, we are looking at interviews and interviewing people from around the field, not necessarily only in ESL, but people who have a voice to contribute something to what we're talking about, right?
That's exciting.
So
really
be
exciting.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to get different voices, different people talking to us, sharing kind of what's going on. We do need them to be able to talk about ESL related things. So we're definitely leaning, towards language acquisition. But
sure,
the plan is first show is our normal format, and the second show is the interview format. And so that's the first week, the first Monday of the month, and the third Monday is the interview show.
Awesome.
So also, Esol, we do still have our pins, and these are super cool. I gave one to my mom for Christmas.
And I gave one to my sister for Christmas.
I did. Cool. And she was excited to get that. But we did talk about those before. We're not going to go super into depth, but we have these limited edition pins, and this time we're giving it to someone different. Esol, tell me.
Right. So I have a colleague who's been really supportive of the show by telling others about it. And she did something unique. She took our sticker and put it on her car. So my colleague, Michelle Queter, got a pin.
Awesome. That is so cool. I love that.
I love
having the sticker out there. Like people are, most people are like, cool. And then they stick it like, inside their bookshelf behind a book or something. But no, thank you, Michelle. We're very much appreciative of that. And
yes.
And we should also point out, our goal was originally like get 50 reviews. I should point out how incredibly hard it is to get people to actually give reviews. Like I begged people, I'm like, don't give me anything for Christmas. Just go and give a review on iTunes. And they're like, yeah, I'll do that. I'm like, instead of the $500 you were handing me right now, just go do that. And they're like, yeah. And they took their $500 and they walked away, and I never got my review. But no, seriously, like even the top shows, like a lot of reviews are hard to get, and so we kind of have to think about that. But we're going to be giving out these pins for special supporters of the show regardless, one way or another. So if we get the reviews, that's awesome. And by the way, we should point out, since there's nobody new, if you posted one, you have a really strong chance of getting one of these pins. Even though there's a lot of listeners, we're still dealing with that one particular thing. I don't know how the big shows do it, but we'll keep working on it. So
yes.
How about you, Esol? Anything new for you?
Well, Tesol's coming up in March. I can't believe we're talking about that already, but I'm going. So that's just a new thing. Nice. I'm looking forward to that.
Are you presenting?
Not presenting. I get to just be part of the audience this time, which is awesome. Okay. No pressure.
Yeah. Definitely. There's so much less stress when you're not presenting, right? You're just like, what do I want to do? And you can do wherever you want to go.
It's like go find new strategies and see what's new out there, because there's just so much every year.
New strategies, all new things. Great. So you'll be at Tesol in Denver, right?
In Denver, end of March. So I'm sure we'll talk about it on the show at some point.
Awesome. And I am presenting for Tesol Orange County on February 1st. So before the next the next You and Me episode comes out, I'll be presenting there, so that'll be good. And I'm also presenting. I'm doing a group presentation with a couple other elementary and junior high ESL teachers in the area.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, this is gonna be pretty cool.
That's really neat.
We have this crew that's called the OC Pub PD, and they do this thing called Mullet PD, and so it's where we do professional organization or professional development at the beginning, and then we go to a bar and we drink and we talk about things afterwards. It's very
That's
cool. Local.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's super awesome. And so if you're in the Orange County area and you want to see a couple of us talking about some of these things, then take a look on Twitter. You can find us, and we'll get that sorted out later. So, Ixchell, today we are talking about why we need to innovate and experiment. So let's jump over to that.
So innovation, teachers are the ultimate problem solvers, constantly trying to find ways to meet different needs of our students. We're always tweaking our approaches, testing out new strategies, and constantly mulling over why something didn't work, what we could have done better. And so by nature, we're constantly experimenting in our craft.
Right. And so we wanted to look at a little bit before we talk about all these, 20 tools for 2020. We wanted to talk about why it's important to try these new things, why we need to innovate and experiment. And I agree that, good teachers, all the good teachers that I know, they're really like, okay, let's try this way. Let's fix it. Let's tweak it. Let's go back. Let's redo this. And that is a great skill. But then there are also some people that have kind of the other ways, and they kind of have the pitfalls with experimentation. So I want to talk before we get into it about a few of the pitfalls with experimenting with new things, just because these are real conversations that often, aren't had, or especially people who are, well, there's not an especially type, I guess, but there are some issues with people around experimenting and around trying new things. So number one, I find that there are some teachers who don't want to share things that aren't working, right? So they say, hey, and I did this thing and it really failed in class, but people don't really want to talk about that because they think it makes them look like a failure as a teacher, possibly, right?
Yeah. And I think of all the strategies that maybe will work for you, but that didn't work for someone else. And that's happened in the past. That's happened to me in the past.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, the opposite of what's on Twitter. Twitter is like, oh, all I do is always awesome. And, everything looks great. And look at all these magical things. And my students are now superheroes, right? And it's like, well, that's not the reality, right? But we have to experiment in order to make, we have to have things that don't work in order to figure out what does work, right? Another problem around experimentation is that students might not feel comfortable doing something if the teacher doesn't know what they're working with inside and out. And so it's like, hey, we're going to try this new thing, but I've never done it before. And then the students kind of end up going crazy, or they're like, what do I do with this? The teacher doesn't know this. And then, if you're at the higher ed level, you might get the bad rate my professor or something like that. But I would also set this up. I'm just going to kind of throw out my solution to this is that if from the very beginning of your class, you say, hey, we experiment, we try different things, we see what works, what doesn't work. And definitely some of these things are not going to be successful for you, but you're still experimenting in English. Then my students are really open to trying new things. And so,
we're always reminding our students, if something doesn't try the first time, try it a different way. If you keep doing something the same way and it's not working, then something's wrong there. Right. So don't be afraid to try new ways.
And then finally, there's the old, I've always done this way. I've done this thing for years and it's always worked. And so therefore, why should I change anything? Right. And I always like that quote. There's a quote that goes around the teacher Twitter and, the teacher social media accounts. There's it's on the wall written somewhere. I think you've probably seen this picture, but the quote is, the most dangerous phrase in the English language is we've always done it this way. And that's from Rear Admiral Grace Hopper.
Absolutely.
totally agree with that. I love it every time it comes up. That years and years that post that quote goes around. I'm like, yep, still good, still a good quote, right?
Yeah, still applies.
Yep. And so yeah, being careful just to say like, hey, I've always done it this way. It's successful. It's like, yeah, it might be successful, but it might not be as engaging, or it might not be the, chalkboards still work, sure, but maybe we need whiteboards, or maybe we need to write on our desks, or do different things. And so there are definitely some things to think about in terms of some of those pitfalls that people have, but we have some ideas for ways and reasons for experimenting.
So one of the descriptions that I read in as I was researching this topic came from an article called "Teaching as Daily Experimentation" by Harvard Education, and Victor Pereira wrote in 2016. He's a science teacher, but he was writing about how teaching by nature is a daily science experiment. You're constantly designing lessons. You're constantly doing mini investigations. You're changing subtle variables. And that's how he described it, that you're measuring the impact on student learning, and that the data you're collecting, the student feedback responses, anything spontaneous or in the moment ideas are what's helping him to identify what he can do to adjust his practice and challenge him to try new approaches to improve teaching. So I think that if we remember and remind ourselves that, teaching is by nature a daily experiment. And the process of research, the process of experimentation is that exactly. Have a hypothesis, try that approach, gather the data, see what happened. Were the expectations met or not met? Okay. You try it all over again, over and over and over and over and over again. And then you either, you start finding out what works better, what doesn't work, what works under some circumstances, and then repeat.
Yep. Applying the scientific method right into the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then kind of one of the things that we tend to do with that when we're saying, well, I don't need to do that because I already know, right? I already know what's going to work. And so this is the confirmation bias. I think probably a lot of people have heard about the confirmation bias in recent years. It kind of comes up more and more often these days, but that's the bias that we think that we already know the answer to something, and so then we search out results that confirm what we already believe we know, right? And so so we have to be really careful about this, about confirmation bias. One great way that we do this at our school is we have our cohorts of teachers, and so we're all teaching the same class, and we get together once a month to talk about what's working and what's not working. And so when a teacher says, hey, I'm thinking about trying this different thing, I try to be as careful as I can to not say, hey, I already did that and it doesn't work. In fact, this came up recently in a meeting, and a teacher said, I want to try this a different way. And I said, well, I did clarify. I said, I did try that. It didn't work, but I want you to try it and see if it works for you, because there definitely could be something that I did that was wrong, that didn't work out well, or, I had my reasons why I didn't want to try it for myself right now. But I'm trying to be active about confronting my own confirmation bias, and also showing that, hopefully, to the other teachers, that it's okay to say, hey, this is what I think, but I'm still going to challenge what I think, because there might be better ways to do things with other information, or with other approaches, or whatever that is. So, so we want to be pretty careful, and it's very, very hard because when we think that we know something, we want to kind of be secure in that belief, and so it's not always easy. And I'm definitely guilty of not successfully challenging my own confirmation bias sometimes, but at least being aware of it is one step.
Right. And then finally, I guess what we need to remind ourselves of is that innovation is not always necessarily using a new piece of technology, but as an article called "Why Innovation Absolutely Matters in Education" explains that it's innovation should encourage teachers and students to explore, to research, and to use all the tools, but all of that in order to uncover something new. So there's something new that comes out at the end. It is, as you said, a different way of looking at a problem and a different way of solving them. And it's also the thinking process that goes into this, which is the important part. This is what will help students develop their creativity and their problem-solving skills. And the same for teachers. It's that thinking process that will help us to innovate. And then this article also had a really neat quote that parallels the role of innovation in education. And this is by William Butler Yeats. And the quote is, "Education should not be the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire." So that just really shows how innovation should help you to look at a different find a new strategy, find a new way to solve things.
Yeah, I've heard that quote before too. And I really like this. Again, it kind of goes back to the same idea that we were talking about earlier. When you start talking about like, hey, if the teacher is willing to show from early on that they are experimenting and they're willing to make mistakes, the students then are going to follow suit with that too. So showing the process of doing those things is learning. If they can understand that whether or not the goal of the individual activity is not hit is not really the point, it's that they're working in the language and going through the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that can actually become very powerful when you start looking at it in terms of innovation and trying new things. So with all of these things in mind, then we are going to shift over to a little bit of application.
So we have 20 tools for 2020, yes. And we do not have the time enough to give them individually, each their own. We can do a whole show on some of these.
I thought we were going to do 20 minutes for each of the 20 tools.
Oh goodness, the 2020 series of our podcast.
Yeah.
But we are going to just give you some that we've tried and that we think are worth exploring. And you can check out the website on our show notes.
Yeah, and I think what we should point out is that we haven't totally worked with these. These are things that we want to experiment with too, right? So it's just like, hey, these are things we've looked at. We've talked about them maybe a little bit. Maybe I've used them once or twice in class, but I kind of want to dig more into them and see how they work, right?
Yes.
That's how I'm looking at it. I'm not sure if that was your
point. Yeah, no. And same thing, because some of these are oldies but goodies, but with a twist, because I've seen on Twitter a lot of teachers are using them in a different way that I've never used them before, or some of these have had updates, and I've never used the updated tool. So those are things I want to explore as well. And I would say if any of our audience members, our listeners are trying these out, let us know. Send us in a review or a note or an email or tweet us. Let us know how you tried it out.
Cool. Okay, so can I start then? And we'll go one.
Go for it. Yes.
Okay. So the first one I'm going to do is Quizlet Live. We talked about this before, and that's the one that you had mentioned that students can do the gaming on and kind of build up it all together. I tried it once last semester with one of my classes, and once they figured out what they were doing, they got super into it. And they're like, and they're like running around the tables and jumping around with each other. So Quizlet Live is definitely one of the ones that I want to experiment more with.
And I've been a fan of Flipgrid for, I think, since it began, but Flipgrid QR codes is a new thing I've seen on Twitter, where teachers are sharing the videos or tutorials, whatever they're creating on Flipgrid, with a QR code and embedding that somewhere. I saw one with augmented reality recently, and I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
So I'd love to explore that a little more this year.
Awesome. Okay, so the next one that I want to look at is Extempore. We actually got an email from these guys kind of saying, hey, this is what we're doing, and it looks really cool. It's kind of like a Flipgrid-ish thing for language, for speaking. Though I think it's audio only right now, but it looks like a really interesting way to prompt students, and then they have to respond right away. And then you can have basically like you give them an audio prompt, they respond to it, and then when you're listening, you can just play it through like a podcast and just listen to one response right after another, and quickly see what's going on with your students. So I need to dig into it more, but Extempore seems like something worth checking out.
Very cool. My next one is quizzes. that's quiz, then another Z, and then a IZZ, and it's an app, and it's been around for a while. But I know that it has you have the ability as a teacher to go in and put in the quiz you want the students to take, but then it also the same concept as Quizlet Live. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of it's a game app, and with a leaderboard and with points, and students can do it on their own, or you can do it at the same time, and you can compete with other people around. So I like the fact that it now, and you can take any kind of quiz. It doesn't have to be education related, but the fact that it allows teachers to go in and make their own quizzes is cool. So I want to try that one more.
Cool. So my next one is Read and Write. This is a great, it's kind of like you can have it either on your computer or you can have an extension in your Google Chrome. But basically it does all these cool, accessibility things for reading, and it will read through your pages on your document, or it will create a vocabulary list, or you can highlight certain words and then you can pull out the vocabulary or the certain words into lists and all sorts of things like that. So
that's cool.
Yeah, there's actually a ton to it, and I'm not giving it any justice by briefly mentioning it in this way.
I've never heard of that one. But, that's awesome.
It's worth looking at. We have it on our campus, so it's already available, but there are free ways to get it for teachers as well.
Okay. My next one is Anchor, and this one was introduced to me by you. It is a free podcasting app that you can use with students. Anyone can use it, but we've used it. I think, Brent, I don't know if in the past you've used it to create podcasts with your students, right? Yeah. To have them and then I recently suggested this to a colleague who was doing podcasting with her students, and it's a kind of a hassle-free way to do it. So I've never used it, so I want to use this one more. So Anchor.
There's a lot of cool things to do with that. Okay, so the next one for me is eslvideo.com. Have you ever been on this site, Ixchell?
No, actually, no.
Yeah.
It sounds like
it's basically like you can kind of create simple versions of pull in a YouTube video and make a quiz based on it right there. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so it's just like, hey, I've got some questions, and they just link the two things together, and you just have a simple class code. So it's not super heavily integrated and all of those types of things that might be nice, but just for jumping in and having your students a little bit more engaged with the video. And they've already got some things in resource available for you, so at least worth looking at eslvideo.com.
Yeah, I'm learning so many new tools too. So my next one is an app. It's IGE, the Interactive Grammar of English. It's an app. I believe it's available for both Android and Apple, and it's kind of for your students who want a deeper explanation of a grammar concept. It gets very basic and then very, very nerdy. So, but it's actually really well done, and it's free. So that's why it's on here. Also, sometimes we as teachers forget a specific grammar point or the exceptions or why or the explanation to something. So it's kind of like a dictionary of grammar, and it's actually really, really well done. So I recommend that to everyone. IGE.
Great. So my next one is PlayPosit. This is not a new one by any means.
I've never heard of that either.
Really? Oh, well, you've heard of Edpuzzle though, right? Kind of similar to those. So, PlayPosit is it's also kind of connected to the ESL video, but basically this one layers a whole quizzing and interactive element on top of the video. And so what it does is you play the video, and then it'll automatically pause the video, and it'll ask them a question that you create. So you multiple choice, or have a chat, or you can whatever. You can do a short answer or something like that. But basically, it makes the students go through all of the steps in order to show that they understand the video. And then so if you assign that as homework, then they have done that. And then what's nice for us is that this is now free at the California Community College level, and also integrates into Canvas. So you can put the grades directly from their work right into everything. So lots and lots and lots of possibilities with this.
I've never heard of that one. Cool. My next one is a favorite. And you also introduced me to this one, but I've been using it a lot. And I want to continue and make new things. This is Clips, and unfortunately, I haven't found an app similar to Clips for Android, but it's only available on for Apple right now. And you can record any video with audio, and the cool thing about it is it transcribes what you're saying, and then you can edit. So in case the word was heard wrong, you can type it correctly. And I've done a lot of really short review clips, grammar clips for my students, and they're constantly asking for one. Miss, are you making a new one? And they're just so good for our students who need to watch something over again with subtitles or captions. Very, very user friendly. So Clips.
Excellent. Great. So my next one is the Google Assignment Similarity Checker. I'm actually thinking about experimenting for this spring semester with not doing Turnitin at all and only using the Google Assignment Similarity Checker. So I don't know how well that's going to work, and I'm not totally sure, but I have run it through on a couple of assignments that I started doing last semester, and I'm just trying to think about ways to make things easier for students. And instead of saying, okay, we're going to write over here, and then we're going to go submit over here, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, if I can kind of keep everything in one ecosystem, I'm going to experiment with it and then see how it works. So that's going to be one for me, built into the Google Assignments or Google Course Kit if you are using Canvas.
Very cool. My next one is Vocab Victor. And this one we found also, I believe they either sent us a message on Twitter or an email, but this was this is a vocabulary app. Your students can find synonyms, and I use it a lot with my students. I recommend it a lot, and now I have a couple of students who follow them on Twitter, and they interact with the students. So that is a really cool one that you can try out.
Great.
Vocab Victor.
Vocab Victor. Okay. So my next one is Burning Vocabulary. This is also a Chrome plugin. But there's kind of some interesting things to do with this if you want to build your vocabulary. Again, this is more something that I would recommend to my students than necessarily for me to have it. But you can do all these things where just when you're reading, you can kind of build a vocabulary list on regular websites. So you can just click on a word and add it to a list, and mark all the words, and then you can check the definition directly inside of there. And then if your students are really trying to build the vocabulary, they can pay a little bit of money. It's like $20 a year or something, and they can make like a calendar dashboard of the words that they were building every day, and they can have these like screenshots of the sentences and make custom words. And so if they're looking at building their vocabulary, this might be one worth looking at.
Very cool. So I have now kind of a bundle. So these are the Master Key Games. These are apps, and they have a vocabulary master, preposition master, listening master. Well, I'm not sure if there's a vocabulary master. There's something with vocabulary in there, but I use those for my students who have trouble with prepositions, for example. And again, they're games and they're really fun. So my students actually play them more and practice more. So these are all, if you look up Master Key Games, I believe they're available for both Android and Apple products.
Oh, cool. Okay, so my next one is Adobe Spark. This is not.
I love Adobe Spark. I love Adobe Spark.
And I do always show it to my students, but I'm actually kind of thinking about ways to get more into it and use it more regularly as a default, instead of like, hey, by the way, at the end of the semester we're doing this project and you should use Adobe Spark to do it. Right? I kind of, it is very self-explanatory for the students, and it really helps build things. But I want to experiment with it more in terms of like really digging into it and seeing what potential we can do with building language and helping students kind of create more for themselves. Cool.
My next suggestion is Vocab Builder, and it's also an app. And as it suggests, it's a vocabulary app, but it's more for the students who are studying GRE, SAT, the academic vocabulary. But it's also very well done, gives you a lot of statistics, and it has a gaming concept in it as well. So this is not by Magoosh. There's another one by Magoosh, but this is by Galvanize, which is another test prep company. So vocab builder.
Cool. All right. So my next one is glideapps.com. This is one I saw a little while ago, but basically what it does is you can convert a Google Sheets into an app for your phone. And so you can take any kind of data and you can turn it into it's hard to describe, but it's all sorts of things. So you can make it into an attendance tracker. You could make it into a database where it's like, hey, these are the people that you're going to be working with. And there's all sorts of different varieties of really, really interesting things. Again, I'm doing it a disservice by talking about it in such short term, but it's probably something we'll end up talking about a little bit more, but I really think there's some interesting potential for individual classroom use where we say, hey, we're doing this thing together and let's put our data into here and then we can use that to flip around into the classroom. So let's, track this information or build this little mini app that we can use on any phone.
Very cool. My next one is VO Screen. That's the letter V and the letter O, and then the word screen. And VO Screen is an app and also a web tool. You can watch this. This pulls a variety of clips from YouTube, from movies, and they're just short clips. And you listen to the clips, and then students or the audience has two choices of paraphrasing what the clip said, and then you chooses one that's like kind of crazy, or you can select between something crazy that they didn't say at all, but it's taken literally. So the student really has to show that they understood the cultural nuances and the idiomatic expressions. And what I really like is that you can focus on grammatical structures within the video. So if you're looking at past tense, it'll pull videos that have the past tense structure. If you want easier versions or harder versions, it can do all of that. So that's VO Screen, and it is free. So that is why I love it.
Nice. Cool. So I skipped one, but I'm going to go back to it. This is my last one, which is the Immersive Reader plugin. So it's an unofficial immersive reader, but Microsoft has this thing called Immersive Reader, and it really helps with reading comprehension. It does all these really interesting things, helping students focus, helps space out the words, and gives parts of speech on words and how to break down the syllables on different words, all sorts of really, really cool things that can help students read. And so someone went out there and made an unofficial one for Google Chrome that you can kind of I think it just sucks from what the original source is, and then you can break down the words and the writing and all sorts of interesting things. So if you are trying to help your students read and understand better and see how words break down, the unofficial Immersive Reader link is great. And of course, we'll have links to all of this on the show notes.
That's awesome. And last but not least, the 20th suggestion for 2020 is Phrasal Verbs in Action. It's an app. Again, as the name of that suggests, it's an app to teach you how to use phrasal verbs, and it has statistics. It has a game concept as well. And a lot of the things I chose are games or have a game aspect to it. And it's actually really well done, and it is free. So that's what I really like about it. It's all broken down into different levels of phrasal verbs as well. So students are not just memorizing, but they're also seeing them in context. So helps them to understand.
Woo, all right. So that is 20 tools for 2020. We made it through, and
20.
That's a lot of things. So everybody, you have to learn all of these before your next class. All right, fun finds.
Yes, my favorite part.
Okay, what do you got?
My fun find is the game Timeline. Have you ever heard of it, Brent?
Did we play this when we were at USC together?
Yes. Okay, so yes, this is it's a game where you're creating a timeline. You're building a timeline with other people, and their events. Again, this game has many different versions of it. I own 3 of them already. Wow. And but when I was in California for the holidays, I found the Americana version. So I'm adding that to my list of fun finds. So it's Americana version, everything related to America in a timeline game.
Great. Great. Okay. So mine is Trader Joe's mochi ice cream. One of my favorite snacks in Japan was yukimi daifuku, which is it's mochi wrapped around ice cream, right? And so this is a very common little dessert in Japan, and I did not know that they made it at Trader Joe's. I must have walked by it a million times, but get yourself that vanilla 6-pack, and even during the winter time, it will treat you well. So Trader Joe's mochi ice cream. All right. So thanks so much for listening to the show. Again, if you want to get one of the DIESOL pins, you got a good chance right now. So help us out and find some way to support us.
Yes. Our next episode coming out on January 20th is an interview with Carol Salva. You do not want to miss this show.
So should we point out, we already recorded this episode with Carol, and man, she has a lot to say. So
yes, it's awesome. We had an awesome time.
She's amazing. I'm looking forward to people hearing this episode. So
I know.
We're just kind of like let the gates open, and she went at it.
Yes, and there's just so much to learn from her, and so much from her that inspires us. So happy to share that one with you coming soon.
Yes.
So you can find more about our show or our episodes at diesel.org.
And we are, of course, on Twitter, so you can find the show at DieselPod. Michelle, we passed 500 followers.
We did. Thank you.
I gotta say, that's pretty impressive. I did not really expect us to do that. I thought like, okay, we'll get some people, but we got 500. And so that means that there are at least 500 people out there who are somewhat interested in EdTech and ESL, which really makes me happy. And I think there are more. I think we're going to find more, but that's pretty cool. So anyways, the show is at DieselPod, or if you want to find me, I am at Brent G. Warner.
And I am at Ixy_Pixie. That's IXY_PIXY. In Spanish, thank you is gracias. Gracias for tuning in to the DIESOL podcast. See you soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. Cool.